This is Mr. Clarence Pleake. Everybody give him a hand for being here. Thank you so much for being here, Mr. Pleake. Of course, he fought at Iwo Jima. I have some pictures of him, but he's here to tell you the story of his life. So please listen. Mr. Pleake, we'll have question and answers afterwards. If you have any questions, write them down, and you'll have a chance to ask those later. You're going to leave your cell phones away, okay? But if you have any questions and you don't want to ask them, give them to me, and I'll ask them for you, okay? So, but don't interrupt, please. Let's go ahead.
You don't mind if I say more? Well, I want to tell you a little about myself first, and the way that things went back in those years, and why I joined the Marine Corps, and all about it. I was born over in Missouri, in the Missouri Ozarks, and I had two brothers and sister, and we all roamed those hills and had a good time. When I started school, it was a little one-room schoolhouse, and really it was great. It was fun there. And then I went up on the hill to a three-room schoolhouse, and I finally built a high school there at Hollister, and I went on through there. Graduated. I kind of wanted to stay in the music part of it, but not knowing anything about the country, I'd never been away from home or anything, and I didn't know. I could have gotten a scholarship. But anyway, I went on and worked around there, and met my wife there. We married in 1940, and after a few months we moved to Kansas City, where I went to work in a dairy. And at that time, a dairy was considered essential industry, and then we had two little kids that were a couple of years old, and I probably never would have gone into the service through the draft board, but I couldn't stand it. All of my friends were gone, and I had a good job making money, and one of my friends was killed during training and all that, and I just couldn't stand it. So a friend of mine was about to be drafted, so we went down to the draft board, went down to the federal building, really, there in Kansas City. And as we walked up the steps, we were headed for the Navy recruiting office. We wanted to get the submarine service. As it turned out, a master gunnery sergeant came out of the Marine Corps recruiting office dressed in blues, and I thought, oh, that's the most beautiful uniform I'd ever seen. That's for me. So while we were standing there arguing, Gunny came down, took us by the arm, led us in, and we signed up for the Marine Corps. So that's the story of how we got in there. Within a few weeks, we were on the train to San Diego and went through boot camp there, up to Camp Pendleton, to the rifle range at Camp Pendleton. And then I did get a delay, 10-day delay after boot camp to come home. And so I had a few days at home, and when I went back, we were organizing the old 5th Division during the Second World War. And we loaded everything aboard ship, and as we went all over the different islands, we picked up new fellows. Some of them had been in the Raiders and the paratroopers in the South Pacific, and those were being disbanded. So they came back to the north and came into our unit, and we finally filled out our 5th Division. And we trained at Camp Tarawa on the island, the big island of Hawaii. And at the same time, the 4th Division was over on Maui. And the 3rd Division, I was told this just recently, that they were over on Kauai. I didn't know that. But we trained together, and we'd go to sea, we'd come back, and then when we finally did shove off, we knew we were going to make a landing somewhere. Tokyo Rose came over the radio on the ship and told us where we were going. See, they didn't tell us anything until we were at sea for a couple of days when you were moving that way. And I thought that was, I just didn't know what to think. Someone being on the radio telling us where we were going, but she was a spy for Japan, I guess. And she was right. Everything that she broadcast came from me. So we did go on over. we went to Guam first. Well, after, after Wake Island and then Weetock, then we went on to Guam. And there at, I believe it was in Weetock, we'd been at sea so long we were getting short of food. And we were given one slice of bread each for a meal, and you held that up to the light and picked the bugs out of it because the flour was buggy. But you know, no one complained. Not one of the guys that I ever heard complain. And we were all in the same boat. But at Guam, they sent us in to take care of some snipers. Guam had been taken not long before that, and snipers were just running wild there. So we went in to take these snipers, and we did get some of them, but I was more afraid of the snakes than the Japanese soldiers. I still am afraid of snakes. I don't like any kind of reptile. After that, we did go on maneuvers for a couple of 3 days, some other islands over there. And then we boarded a smaller ship. It was called LCT, Landing Craft Tank. And do you all know what an amphibious tractor is? All right, that's what we made the landing at Iwo. And this ship had all those in the hold waiting for us. So we got all of our gear and loaded aboard the ship. And I have no idea how many ships there was in that convoy going up there. And they'd been bombing Iwo for weeks and weeks, both from the air and by sea. And the purpose of taking Iwo, which you may already know, it was, I guess, about halfway between Saipan and Tokyo. And our bombers would leave Saipan, but after dropping their bombs, if there was bad weather or anything that interfered with them, they couldn't make it back again. They'd have to ditch at sea. So a lot of them were rescued, a lot of them were not. But we went in at Iwo Jima to take the island so there'd be a place for these bombers to land. We didn't know it at the time, but our next landing was going to be the mainland of Japan. And later we occupied Japan and landed at the same place that we would have landed had we still been at war. But while we were at sea, we could see Iwo Jima ahead of us, and it was just a shambles. You could see Mount Suribachi sticking out. We got up pretty close and dropped anchor, and the ships were everywhere there, hospital ships, destroyers, everything. And about 3 o'clock in the morning, we had 3 services aboard ship, Protestant, Jewish, and Catholic. And then Ganesh, or the cook, served us a wonderful breakfast. It was the best we'd had in a long time. And then we boarded our amphibious tractors and went down the ramp. And that scared the heck out of me, because when those things go down the ramp, the water comes clear up to the windshield. And it finally settled down, though, and we went on out. And I guess you all know that we had, in our squad, there was 8 men plus 1 man attached. And so we had 1 squad in each amphibious tractor. We made the rendezvous and we circled until the exact time, and we were told to take off. So we got in the line and headed for the beach. And we got up on the beach, and I didn't tell the young people yesterday this. When you hit the beach, you go up on it and turn left and stop. You bail out on the, you have to go over the side, bail out over on the water side, crawl around back of it, and you don't hesitate, because the next tank's going to run over you if you do. So we crawled around back, and we got already had to climb this huge sand bank. It was hard to get up because it was loose sand. With all the firing going on and everything, it was hard to get up. But we finally got to the top of it, and we could see Mount Suribachi there on the left. The 28th Regiment was on my left. I was in the 27th. And we went straight across the south end of the island, and my regiment turned to the right, and the 28th turned left and took the mountain. And it was quite an experience there. And then on the fourth day, we had gained probably a couple hundred yards. We were up even with the first airstrip. And one morning I heard all this commotion, and I looked over and some guys were pointing back, and I looked behind me, and the 28th Regiment had taken Mount Suribachi and were raising the first little flag. And I was so happy. It was a small flag, and it looked like an old crooked piece of pipe as a staff. And they were up there getting that flag raised, and I stood up. And I look back now, and I don't know why I'm here, because firing was going on everywhere, and I finally realized how stupid I was, and I laid down again. But I thought the war would be over. It wasn't. It was 32 more days before the war was over. And but we went ahead. We worked our way on up toward the other end, and we had 2 or 3 little odd things happen that one may be of interest to you. We'd been pulled off the lines after about a week, and while we were back supposed to be resting, our captain said, I need 3 men to go up and see if they can get a sniper on Mount Suribachi. It seemed that there was a cave up there, and he'd come out and shoot and then go back in this cave. So Hank and Norm and I said, well, we'll go. So we climbed up there, and I had a satchel charge. Do you all know what a satchel charge is? It's blocks of explosives in a kind of a canvas bag, and then there's a detonator. You never carry it. The same guy never carried both of them. I had the satchel charge, and Hank had the detonator behind me, and Norm stayed at the mouth of the cave, and we crawled back. It was dark as the dickens. We got it set just by feel, and we started out, and I guess Norm decided we'd been there too long, because all at once 2 arms grabbed us, and all 3 of us went to the edge and over just as that thing exploded. We'd cut the fuse a little short so that it would not take too long. And it's a good thing he came and got us, I guess, because there was another experience. I wonder why we made it. But we went over the edge and we tumbled for, yards down the mountain. It didn't hurt us so much. We were just scratched and bruised, but the concussion is what hurts. We couldn't hear anything for hours after that. And then we went on, and another time there was an experience that we look back and kind of laugh about. We had taken a pillbox, and on Iwo Jima you don't stand up very much. You're on your stomach most of the time crawling. But we had taken this pillbox, and it was about 4 feet high, 4 or 5, and we were standing up behind it, and all at once a Japanese grenade rolled right down between us. And my one buddy, Hank, kicked it off into a little hole there, and we hit the deck. The thing exploded, and then again it didn't hurt any of us. So we know someone was watching out for us. But we go on to the end of the island, and it got real rugged toward the north end. There was a lot of shallow ravines and ledges and all that kind of thing. And when the island was finally secured, we were told to go back and we would board a ship to come home. So they gave us time, though, to go by the cemetery. We did go there, and that was rough to see all those little crosses of guys that we had been there with. Some of them we actually saw them die. And then we climbed to the top of Mount Suribachi and looked that over to see where the flag really was. And then we went aboard ship. And then a funny thing happened. We'd been on the island there 36 days without shaving, no toothbrush or anything like that. We felt terrible. Our clothes were in rags. We're standing topside waiting to be assigned some quarters, and a guy walks by, a sailor, and I thought, I should know that fellow. He came back by, the 3rd time I yelled Benny, and it was him. It was Benny Barton that I went to school with in high school. I thought, what a coincidence. And we were so happy. I'd go down and see him when he didn't have duty, and he'd get all kinds of goodies from the kitchen for me. but that was a good time. So we sat there 3 days at anchor, not knowing why, until later. And you may remember in your history that Okinawa was hit shortly after Iwo, and they didn't have any opposition when they made the landing there. It was several days later before they needed us. So after 3 days, we pulled anchor and headed back to Hawaii, and when they did need us, we were too far gone. We couldn't help them. So we didn't have to make that landing. But we came back to Hawaii, and we started building the division again, and like I told you, we didn't know that we were going to the main Japanese islands. That's where our next landing was going to be, that we learned later. But we got the division built back and everything, and at noon one day I came out of the galley and had 2 big garbage cans with heat under them. You washed your mess in one and dipped it in the other one in hot water to dry it. And there by the side of it was a rack full of stars and stripes. And across the top of it was read all about it, atomic bomb drops. So a young fellow was walking down the street, he was selling them 3 cents a piece. I got one, and it told about the atomic bomb being dropped at Hiroshima. Well, we were just amazed at that. We didn't know anything about the atomic bomb. And so right away though, we started loading and everything, and within 3 days, I guess, we were aboard ship headed west again. And I didn't tell you, I forgot to tell you, when we were on Iwo though, one day I was laying there in the hold, and a P-38, it's an airplane with a double fuselage. They were painted black and they had radar on. And one of the crew came over and jumped in the hole where I was, and we were laying there watching, and he was telling me about radar. We'd never heard of it. And he explained to us how they could spot a Japanese plane in the air and not even see it until it bursts into flame when they shoot it. And we thought, my, the war's going to be over soon. About it, it was quite a while before it was over, but that was a thing we looked forward to. And then when one of the big bombers, I said before, I think it was the first one, I believe it was, but I'm not sure, it landed, and I got to talk to part of the crew. And they told me they didn't have fuel enough to circle that island again. They never would have made it back to Saipan. So we were, again, glad that we got the island for them to land on, saved the crew there, and many more after that. But when we left Hawaii the second time, going west, we got about halfway out, I guess, 3 or 4 days out, and Japan surrendered. And so we headed toward the Japanese mainland, and we got to just south of Kyushu, Japan, and we dropped anchor there. We had to wait until President Harry Truman got to Tokyo Harbor to sign the treaty. As soon as that was done, we sent in the Navy, they call them SEALs now, and I can't remember what they were called back then, but they cut the nets. It was a natural harbor, a beautiful harbor. I suppose 2 ships could have gone in abreast. It was that narrow. And then when you got inside, here was several square miles of water. It was just great for a harbor. And we got to go in. We dropped anchor in the harbor that evening, and it was getting so late. And some of them there didn't know the war was over. They fired on us from shore. We sent out patrols, didn't find anything. And the next morning, we eased up to the wharf, and I remember the first Japanese person that I saw was an old fella. He came out of the warehouse there at the wharf where we docked, and he jumped in a 1937 Chevrolet with the right-hand drive and went bouncing off down the dock. And I thought I would see it again. While we were aboard ship, and I told you they were breaking up our division, 2 of us, Deepola and I, were transferred into intelligence, so I thought I'll get to see that again. Never did. It disappeared. But we had a real good duty. We went on to a prisoner of war camp, and the prisoners were gone from there by then. And but we inventoried all of that, and then went out to a little town of Sataka, and it was a brewery that had been taken over by the military. During the war years, they'd taken over the schools and everything for war goods storage. So we got out there, and we were sending all the metal stuff, clips, shells, and everything, without the explosive in them. We were sending all that to a smelter to be melted down, and the webbing material, belts, and everything we were burning. And I got permission from my captain. Several of the natives wanted that for shoe soles. Some of it was that big, and so he gave me permission, and we let them cut up as long as they do it right there. They took some of the materials to make shoe soles, and their shoes were tennis shoes with, you've seen a mitten with just one thumb place. Well, their shoes were that way, just one place for the big toe. And I always wondered how they're going to use that. If they had to glue it, so I guess they had some glue or something. But anyway, that helped them some. Then one of the guys, when we got to Japan, it was like being in Paris again, only it was where we could find a stand. And one of the guys found a barber shop, so I decided I'd go down there one morning with him and get a shave. So I go down, and when it's my turn to get the chair, it's just a regular chair at home. Their barber shop was in their house, and both the man and the woman were barbers.
Japanese barbers.
Yeah, Japanese barbers. And I thought when I sat in that chair the first time, I don't know if I'm going to like this or not. One swipe and I'm gone. But they were nice people, and we got to know a lot of them. And one day we'd gone into another town, and we always go to the police department and try to get an interpreter. So I had waited by the duck outside of this building. You know what a duck is, like we have down at Branson, floats and everything. So I was waiting there by the duck, and here an older man comes running up, and he says, "Can I help you?" I said, "No, I don't think so. I think everything's under control." And he got about halfway to the office, and it dawned on me he's speaking English. So
he was looking for a Japanese interpreter in this guy.
I said, "Yes, you can help us." So I walked over to where he was, and he was real kind. And come to find out, he was a school teacher and used to teach English there. And during those war years, he said whenever he could sneak away, and any of the kids that wanted to learn English, he took them out in the woods and taught them what he could. But he said they would have killed him if they had known he was going to. And so we inventoried their big naval base there at Sasebo, and that was great. It was good work. I enjoyed it very much. And some of you fellows know what I'm talking about. These big milling machines with Cincinnati stamped on the side of them, that's what all their equipment was. And later I was talking to a friend of mine who had joined the Navy right after the war, and he said that the Japanese government had been buying up scrap steel over here, and they'd be at sea, and when they'd see a Japanese ship come in sight, they'd train their guns on it for as long as they were in sight, because they knew they were taking that scrap steel for some no good reason. And sure enough, they were using it to make military things. But all those machines, and plastic was just new then. One of my friends was a machinist here at home, and they had big square blocks of clear plastic that we'd never seen before. And he took one of those and put it into one of the machines and worked it down to a cigarette ashtray. And that was the prettiest thing. Where the bit cut into it, it frosted it, and the rest of it was clear. But those kind of things may not be of interest to you. It's some of the things that happened there.
Can you tell them the reaction that the Japanese people had when y'all first came ashore?
Yes, they were scared of us. We didn't see the one man I saw in the car was the first I saw. And I don't think I saw any more for about 3 days. And then the little kids started coming out, and the grown-ups. And in our rations, there was 3 or 4 pieces of this real hard candy. So we'd give that to the kids. Some of them, I'm sure, had never tasted candy before, and they loved it. So we saved all of our candy for the little kids. cigarettes came 4 in a package, just 4 cigarettes. And we'd give those to the guys. I never did smoke, so I didn't miss it.
Not the kids, the adults.
But it was quite an experience, and they were good people. When we got acquainted with them, they were nice, they were accommodating. And I started to tell you, out at Sataka, when we were taking over that big brewery, there was a young couple that was in charge of that. And each morning about 10 o'clock, she would bring out a big platter of sliced sweet potatoes that she had dipped in a batter and fried in oil. Oh, those were so good, you know. And let's see.
Will you tell them about Nagasaki as well?
Oh, yes. We decided, we 3 guys I told you about, we stuck together all we could, even though we were not in the same outfits back then in Japan. But we made arrangements one day to get off, and we hitched a ride on a Jeep down to Nagasaki, where the second atomic bomb had been dropped. And it was terrible. There wasn't a building standing. It was just flat. Nothing but rubble, trash, everything gone. And so we're standing there looking around, and here comes the MPs from all directions, seemed like. Boy, they collared us, took us into their headquarters, and read us off, and got our names and outfits. We thought they were going to throw us in the brig. They were so mean toward us. And finally, though, they said, well, you go back to your outfit, and you'll be hearing from us. So we caught a Jeep back up there, but we never heard any more from them. What it was, Nagasaki was still radioactive, and we didn't know that. We were not supposed to be down there. So I guess it didn't hurt us any. And then I finally got enough points to come home, so we boarded ship. We came the northern route through the Aleutian Islands, and we hit one of the darndest storms I ever was in. Waves were so high they were coming over the top of the ship, the deck, and the sailors had lines tied from a hatch to wherever their duty was, and a ring on their belt. They attached that ring to the line and slide it along to where they were working, and there'd be 2 together going that way. So it was one heck of a storm, but I didn't get seasick on that one. And then we got home. It was so great to get home and get off the ship, go up to Camp Pendleton, and I guess we were there about 3 days. They were processing us. And then I had gone in Kansas City, and that was in the 11th Naval District. So they sent me up to, I think I said yesterday San Jose, but I believe it was another town up there. It's a submarine base. And they gave us our discharges there. And then we started home. And on the train, before we got back to Kansas City, I had given the porter money to send a telegram to my family telling them when I'd be in Kansas City. And so several hours before we got there, I went back and put on my uniform and cleaned up, and oh, I was so happy. And I get off the train, told my guys so long, and up the ladder I went and got topside, not a soul up there that I knew. Stood around an hour, no one showed up, so I called, and she didn't have the message. So she was so excited, and they got things ready and came down and got me, and it was just great. Larry and Linda, my 2 kids, were, I guess, they were born in 1942. But anyway, we had a great time going home, and when we got back, she couldn't find the key to the garage to get her car out, so her dad had left a hacksaw in on the back porch, and she sawed the lock off. When we got back, there was the key laying in plain sight. She was so excited. But we went back down in the Ozarks for a while, and life was good. We did all right. We had great times and everything. But then I decided I would, well, I was getting where I had to make up my mind. I was running out of money, and mustard and outpay was only $300 then, you know. So the 3rd month, I'd worked in a lumber yard there for a little while, and then I decided that I had to do something else. And I applied for a driver's job in Springfield, Missouri for Greyhound lines. they were hiring, and sure enough, within about a week, while I was on the way to Dallas to the driver's school, and that's why we came to Tulsa. They didn't need drivers in Springfield, and we came out here, and people were so wonderful, and a good place to live, and the schools were great. Larry and Linda were just at the age to start school by then, so that's why we stayed here in Tulsa, and it's still good. And I want you all to know it's so wonderful to sit here and see all of you out here knowing what life has for you, ahead of you. Life is so great. Anna and I are getting along in years. We're 92 and 3 years old, and we don't stop at hardly anything. We take an ocean to go out to eat. We flew to Sacramento a few weeks ago, and our daughter and daughter-in-law went with us, and we rented a car and drove up to our cousins who are ranchers. And after that, I drove down to see my brother by Dallas. We just have a great time, so life really is great. And I've had such a wonderful life. I don't have any complaints. I gripe a little now and then.
Does anybody have any questions? Jeffrey?
If you could go back and change anything, would you?
Would it?
If you could go back and change anything, would you change anything?
I don't think I would. I've made a few mistakes, but life has been so good, I don't really think I would change anything. I think once in a while of the career I might have had in music, this scholarship was in Drake University at Des Moines, Iowa. But I'd never been away from home, and I didn't know, and there was no one to tell me you can work to make your way through there. I was just a hillbilly. So I didn't go. And I've wondered about it, but I've never regretted anything, because it's been great. I have a wonderful family. I tell you, they do everything for me. I can't mention too many things, but they'll be doing it for me.
Would you still enlist would you still go back and re-enlist?
Yes, if this was to do over again, I don't mind telling you, I'd be the first in line. At my age, there's something I could be doing, and I would. I go out to see the recruiters every now and then on 31st Street, and we talk, and we just have a great time. Yes, sir?
Out of your life so far, what has been the greatest moment for you?
The greatest moments? I think if I could spread it over time, it's watching my kids grow up and now their families. I have, there's 5 generations of us now. My daughter and then her daughter, which is Lori, she's here, and her husband, and her son, Charlie, he's here. And then let's see, my daughter-in-law, we lost our son in 1981. He had cancer. But they had 2 children, a boy and a girl, and so that granddaughter has a daughter, which is my great-granddaughter. Now she has a little boy, so I'm a great-granddaughter. But it's fun. Life is really good. Along that line, I had thought of going back to Iwo Jima one time. There's an organization back east that they do tours all the time. They take you to Guam, and then they take a day and fly up to Iwo, and you spend a day up there. And I thought I'd like to do that one time, but then I got thinking, no, I've got enough problems now because people tell you, and I don't mind telling you this, they say they were not afraid out there. I don't believe them, because I was scared at different times, but you're trained. The fear is there, but you overcome it with what you're trained to do. So you go ahead and do what you have to do. Sure, you're going to be scared. I never saw anyone that wasn't. And let's see.
Why would you not go back to Iwo Jima?
I decided that I wouldn't go back for that reason. I still have to go to a class out at the VA once a month. It has to do with PTSD. So any other questions?
What was the prettiest place you traveled to?
The prettiest place? Well, the islands in the Pacific are all beautiful. I love Hawaii. But Wake and Weetock were pretty well torn up when I was there. Now, the Japanese homeland was pretty. The parts that, if you got away from where the war actually was, it was a pretty land. But those people, as sharp as they are, when I was there, I'm speaking years ago now, they were probably 50 years behind us on most everything except irrigation. And I swear they could almost make water run uphill. Rice is their main crop, and there would be a place up on the side of the hill, maybe 6 or 8 feet wide and 20 feet long. They would level that, put a little levee out and run water up there some way. They'd get water pumped up there and raise rice on it. They grew rice.
Would you want to re-enlist in a different branch of the military?
No, I think I'd go right back to the Marine Corps. I love it. I still belong to the Marine Corps League, and we meet every month. Get to see my old cronies, not the ones I was with, because these are all younger. I'm the only one from the Second War. The rest of them are from the Vietnam War. Yes.
How did you feel when they first raised the flag on Iwo Jima?
I felt the war was over. That's why I stood up. And there was no fear. I just stood up, and I was so happy, and I was stupid. And you just don't do that anymore. Yes, I thought surely it was over. And then it finally dawned on me how dumb it was.
Is there any advice that you would give us?
Advice?
Yeah.
I don't really like to give advice. I will say this, life is so wonderful. You do everything you can in life because it's great. My dad used to tell me, you were given a life to enjoy, but you also have obligations with it. He said, you go out and you work. The one thing I remember, he said, do something good for someone every day. And so later it dawned on me that that was a pretty good philosophy.
What was your standard issue weapon?
Louder.
What was your standard issue weapon?
What was the weapon we used?
I had an M1, and our machine guns were the A4 air-cooled, and we had 81 millimeter mortars, 60 millimeter mortars, and we had half tracks with, I believe those were 75 caliber on those, and then aboard ship, we had to stand and watch a lot aboard ship, and those were, let's see, was it 40 caliber? They had twin barrels on those. Took 2 men, one on each side, seated, and you had cranks and pedals. One was for elevation, the other for traverse. And if anything came in sight, you coordinated your guns according to that. Those were anti-aircraft guns.
After World War II, did you ever travel to Europe?
Did I
Did you ever go to Europe after World War II?
go to Europe? No. When I finished at Japan and came home, I stayed right here. Now I have 2 brothers. Both of them were in the Army, and they served in the European theater. My middle brother was shot up pretty bad in Germany, but never hear him complain. He lives down near Dallas. And my youngest brother made a career of the Army, and he retired from Fort Bliss at El Paso, still lives out there. But we were all in it. I look back and I wonder what my dad and mother thought with 3 kids in the military in a war. It must have been pretty rough on them.
How old were you whenever you entered into the
23. I was 23.
How much did you get paid?
Pardon me?
How much did you get paid per month?
I got $51 a month, and my wife got an allotment. She got $50, plus $30 for one child and $20 for the second child. So she got $100 a month, and I had all of mine sent home except $5. And what we would do, after I got out of boot camp in San Diego and could get a Liberty. My $5 didn't go very far, but I didn't drink or smoke, so I'd go to town, and they didn't have pin setters in the bowling alleys back then. So I'd go over to the bowling alley there in San Diego, and for 9 cents a line, you could work. You had to get in line because 3 or 4 guys would get ahead of you, and they'd all be wanting to work a little while, make some Liberty money. So that's what we would do, and you set 2 lines at a time, so you made 18 cents really. They took the divider out between 2 lanes, and you set pins on 2 lines. That was pretty good. You get $6, $7. That was enough for Liberty. We liked good food and roam around. Once in a while, we'd ride a streetcar or out to the end of the line, and back just for the heck of it.
After you got home, what was the first meal that you had?
The first meal? You know, I can't remember, but my wife was so happy what we all were, but she fixed everything. I don't have any idea what it was now. I will tell you about my Thanksgiving in Japan is one I'll never forget. We had been on rations for weeks, either KFC rations, all those weeks.
Will you tell them, before you go on, will you tell them what's in a KFC ration?
What's in them?
Yeah, will you tell them what
Yeah.
you're eating?
A C ration was a can, and they had different kinds of stuff in it. I loved the pork and beans. It was like pork and beans we get today. They were really good. And they had one that had Spam in it, and there were several things. I didn't care much for the Spam. And then in the K rations, there was 3 or 4 things. There was a little chocolate bar. There was 4 cigarettes, 3 or 4 pieces of hard candy, and I think there was some crackers or something in there, but it was a good ration. All of this was high protein stuff. But what I was going to tell you about the Thanksgiving in Japan, we'd been on rations all this time, and we got word from our gunny that Chuck had set up a field kitchen across this river. If we could come over, he'd have hot food for us for Thanksgiving, 1945. And we were looking forward to that. So we found a duck crew at the time, and they took us over there. And first we went across this river, and it was flooding. Made it over all right, picked up our food and everything, came back, and we did make it back all right, but I didn't think we were going to. It was so swift, and those ducks are pretty slow. And when we got to the other side, the front wheels wouldn't pick it up and pull us out. And so I was up near the front, and I yelled, release the air on the front wheels, and he did, and it caught, and we pulled out. I could have reached the railroad bridge right on the right, it would have taken a trot under it. We were lucky, we got by. But then we went on over and set up the field kitchen, the mess line. And when I went by with my mess kit, I got the biggest old turkey drumstick I ever saw. They put that on, I looked at it, my eyes got big. Oh, that was so good, you know. But I'll never forget it. And those things may be boring to you, I hope not, but that's some of the things I remember. That was really, really a Thanksgiving that I'll never forget.
Can you tell them the story of the Japanese POW that we had at Iwo Jima with the one you saw?
The prisoner of war?
Yeah, on Iwo Jima.
Yeah, I was asked that yesterday. We didn't take any prisoners, my immediate outfit, but I was down by the sick bay one day, and there on Iwo Jima, and there was a Japanese prisoner there, and he had very little clothing on, and his skin was just hanging because he'd been close to an explosion, I guess, and was burned real bad. I know he was hurt. He was in terrible pain and everything, and the guys were trying to patch him up and help him, but he was still scared, afraid of him. He got up and ran, and they had to shoot him. So that was the only prisoner that I actually saw.
Whenever Japan bombed Pearl Harbor, where were you? Whenever Japan bombed Pearl Harbor, where were you?
When Pearl Harbor was first bombed, I was in Kansas City, Missouri. We had moved up there, and I was working in a dairy. And we came out that day. I worked in the cheese department, and we had to wait an hour or so. And so we decided to go down to this little restaurant for a cup of coffee. And paper boys were on the street, read all about it, extras, and we bought one and found that the Pearl Harbor had been bombed. And I was young then, and that just hit me wrong. I was mad, and I stayed, and I got to tell you about this too. I was upset about that because where I grew up, you don't do things like that. You work it out some way. And later on, though, I stayed that way. I was bitter for a long time. And in 1970, we went on a tour of Hawaii, and we had to go up to St. Louis and flew nonstop to Honolulu, and we were over there about a week. And everywhere we went, we could see the young Oriental people with their families, and they were having such a wonderful time. And I got to thinking, maybe I'm wrong on this. They had nothing to do with that, you know. And coming back, I thought about it. 3 years later, 1973, we went back again, and the two of us just went on our own and rented a car, and we drove all over the three islands that time. And I saw the same thing, and that was all it took. I got that out of my mind, and I'm so glad. Well, it was kind of like a load that I got rid of. But I have no ill feelings toward it anymore now. It's gone. I'm so glad.
How long have you and your wife been married?
Ann and I have been married 12 years. Our spouses died, hers in 1986 and mine in 1995. I got to flirting with her one day. She
Anybody else have a question? Yes, Susan, did you have one?
How many times did you get sick when you were out there?
How many times did I get sick? Well, I was seasick the first time I went to sea, and that's the only time over there. And I didn't have much of a problem. I'm a little bit ashamed of this. I'll tell you about it. We had a squad leader that was we called him the agent because he got out and found out what was going on. And when Germany quit, they stopped the war before Japan did. And when they quit, we were back in Hawaii. And our squad leader went up to officers' country, and when he came back, he had a big bottle of whiskey for each one of us. Well, I'm not a drinker, never was, but I thought that's what you're supposed to do. Didn't take much of it till I was about to go under. So I crawled under an old warehouse and slept it off out there that night. Came in the next day for roll call early in the morning, got sick in roll call, and Gunny just grinned at me. He knew what was going on. And but that was all it took. I didn't want to know that. So I'm a little ashamed of that. You got to be honest about it. It happened.
Anybody else? Question? You've gone on honor flight since then. Where did you go to? Can you tell them about the honor flight you did go on?
That was quite an experience, and it's so wonderful. If you have grandfathers or anyone that hasn't made that Second World War veterans, talk them into it if you can. We went out on a Tuesday evening on South Memorial to the Spirit, is it the Spirit Bank Center?
Spirit Center.
Huh?
The Spirit
Event Center.
Yeah, for orientation. And then the next morning at 4 o'clock, we all met out there, and we boarded 3 buses, and they took us to the airport. And security was opened up. They had the mayor and everyone out there, and security people, they just let us go right on into the area where the plane was. We walked aboard the plane. As soon as we were airborne, they served us breakfast, and we landed in Baltimore, and we came off. We could leave anything on the plane we needed to because we were coming back the same plane that evening. We boarded buses, and on the way into Washington, D.C., they served lunch for us, and it was great. We just enjoyed that. And then all afternoon, we went from one memorial to another. The Second World War Memorial, the Lincoln Memorial, the Vietnam Memorial, Korean, everything of interest we saw. Went out to the cemetery and we saw the changing of the guard. It was really interesting, things that I never would have seen had it not been for this trip. And they wouldn't let you pay a thing. We had an attendant, and my attendant, one of the guys came up short, he just couldn't go, so my attendant took 2 of us. They had 16 wheelchairs under the bus and on the plane or whatever, wherever they needed it. I guess we wouldn't have needed it on the plane, so I just didn't. But every time we stopped, the attendants got out and got all of those wheelchairs out, set them up, and anyone needed a wheelchair could get in a wheelchair, and they took you anywhere that you wanted to go. And then they loaded them back again when we'd come back. It was an all-day thing. About 5 o'clock, we were headed back to Baltimore. We boarded the plane, and they served us dinner. I couldn't eat a thing, I was so full. And we flew back to Tulsa. We were back here at, let's see, about 9 o'clock our time, I guess. And the buses met us at the airport, took us back to our cars. It was a great day. It's a long day, but it's really worth the time to get to see that.
Where were you at when Germany surrendered?
Where were you at when Germany surrendered?
In Hawaii. Yeah, we had, that was after we came back from Iwo, I believe. It's been so many years, I kind of forget part of it, but I think so. I think that's what it was. And yeah, let's see. Yeah, that's where it was.
Were you wounded at all, Mr. Pleake? Were you wounded at all? In the war, were you wounded?
No, I was lucky. That's why I look back and I wonder, why me? We 3 guys, Hank, Norm, and I, all 3 made it back. And we stayed close friends until we were both gone.
Do you still have the uniform that we call?
I didn't have, well, let me put it this way. I told you that I went in because of the blues. I liked the blues uniform. Never did get the blues. They issued greens during the war years, so I never had any blues. But I came home, and I guess I mentioned it in front of my family, because a few years ago, for Christmas, I get a full uniform of Marine Corps blues. So I wear those to our Marine Corps ball in November of each year. And I just love them. I think they look nice.
Can you explain how nice that first shower was after 36 days? What the first shower you took after 36 days on Iwo Jima?
Oh yeah, aboard ship when we got our shower. Of course, so many of us, well, I think 31, and we were waiting for a shower, and the water was cold, no hot water. But we didn't mind that at all. We got in there, and I stayed as long as I dared before. I knew some of them ducked me in the ocean, and I stayed too long. But yes, that was great. And then we got new clothing, such as it was, because in wartime, they didn't have much Marine Corps stuff aboard the ship. So we had to take whatever we could get until we got back. But that was all right. We didn't mind at all.
So you asked a question. Mr. Pleake, thank you so much
You're
for
sure
coming to
welcome.
talk to us.
I just want to thank you all for listening to me, and I hope I didn't bore you too much. Life is so great. Anna and I are enjoying it. This is a pleasure to see you all here.
Can I give Mr. Pleake a hand? If you want to take a picture with Mr. Pleake, this would be the time. Shake his hand, get a chance to talk to him. This would be the time. You have to post these on the class Facebook wall, though. That's the only requirement. So, okay.
Can I take a picture with you?
Sure.
Come on, let's much.
You're welcome.
Yes, ma'am.
She didn't know my face.
Thanks to you. Good to see you. How you doing? Good to see you again.
Every time you get one, I know I'll next time.
See you.
Thanks, sir.
See you. How you doing?
Thank you, sir.
See you. You're welcome. You're sure welcome. You doing all right?
Thank you. Oh, I took your stick.
Thank you. How are you doing? Oh, it's just a Stetson. They call them snap for him or something like that.
I have a baby house and dogs. I collect hats like that.
Yes.
It's nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you.
I enjoyed your stories.
Thank you. How you doing?
I'm doing good.
It's great. It's good.
How are you? Just right.
Don't poke me. Poke you in the back. I said, don't poke me anytime you want this one.
Take a picture.
Wait, hold on, bro. It's just. Oh, is it good? Check it out.
Yeah.
All right, I got to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Ready? Let's go. 1, 2, 3.
Bye. See you all. How you doing? How are you? How you doing?
You guys look alike now that
How you doing? Two of you, huh? Have a good one. See you. How are you?
Mine?
Damn. No? Okay. ¿Te tomas una mi zona?
You're cut off to the side a little bit. I tried to get you in, but.
Wait, never mind.
Well, how you doing?
I went to that school.
I was going to be a
You gotta teach everyone that has an office grades. I didn't appreciate
No. You mean the machine gun, A4?
No, the AA guns, anti-air.
Anti-air.
Yeah, with
They were
44.
twin barrels. It seemed to me like they were 40 calibers, but I'm afraid to say
Either they're 20 millimeter or 44 millimeter.
maybe it's 20.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I keep mixing them up. I get mixed up with the German ones.
Yeah. The way they shoot, they don't shoot the same.
It goes 20 millimeter.
That's what they were then.
Yeah.
And all those years.
Yeah, I did actually.
Yeah. How you doing?
It's a lie.
How you doing? All right.